Hey there, welcome to this video. Today I'm going to show a podcast that I made with Jonas Erb. He's somebody who has really dedicated himself to discovering what does it mean to be real? How can I live an authentic life? And how can I live in alignment with who I really am? And how can I discover who I really am in the first place? In today's podcast, there's lots of juicy insights. We're going really deep. If you want to find out more about Jonas, then go into the description. I have his YouTube channel linked, his Instagram, and his website. So I hope you guys enjoy, and feel free to leave us your comments and your thoughts about this podcast episode down below. What I'm really curious about is like this, how did you come up with this idea of embodied authenticity?
I think to explain how I came up with it, we have to first kind of take away the two words, because it's embodied or embodiment and authenticity. My search has always been about authenticity, because for me, authenticity is really, the more I can be authentic, the more I'm doing what I want to do and I'm not doing what I don't want to do, which means like I'm in alignment with myself, like with my deeper self, with like who I want to be, or actually not who I want to be, but who I am at the core. Because it's almost like I almost can't choose who I am in a sense, because I can only uncover who I am and then learn to live according to this, because then I'm going to be fulfilled. If I'm trying to go against, like, there's obviously also, I can create my reality and all that, but I'm talking about like, it's like, what am I informing my decisions and my action with? And if I'm informing it with something that's deeper inside of myself, it's going to be that deeper, true authenticity. That is what I really want to do and how I want to be in a life. That just always made sense to me. I'm going to be the most happy if I do that. And I'm always going to feel a little bit weird if I'm not in integrity with myself, if I'm not authentic, if I'm not really following what truly makes me feel alive, what makes me feel joyful, what makes me feel in integrity, you know? And so that search for authenticity has probably been there my whole life, also because I've been challenged to sometimes not be authentic, or like, it was like, what happens when I'm not authentic? What happens when I'm authentic? When am I most alive? When am I most fulfilled? And I came to the conclusion that if I am authentic, if I'm really listening to that deeper feeling of what I truly want, and if I also learn what I don't want, and I learn how I can actually follow that, I'm going to be the most happy, and I'm going to bring the most value into the world, and it's just going to be the most beautiful experience that I can think of, that I can imagine. And what I learned is that embodiment is kind of like the missing piece that I have missed for a long time to be able to actually be authentic. Because it's like I can't think more about it and think more about it, what I truly want. I have to feel. I have to like connect to a deeper source inside of myself. And that's also one of the reasons why I meditated so much. Probably, I think it's like 11 years by now that I meditated daily.
Wow.
And it's like probably been the most impactful thing I've ever done in my whole life. And it's because I started to see not see only, but also just feel and experience and learn what's actually happening inside of myself. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? And not so much on a cognitive level, also on a cognitive level, but more so on a on a body level, and even on a deeper, maybe spiritual level. Because there's all these layers to my being, and if I'm just in my thoughts, I'm just in one level of my being. And my idea is, the more of my being and the more layers of my being that I can uncover and connect to, the more I can be authentic. The more I can be who I am, because I'm all of myself anyways. The more I can connect to that. Like, let's say my emotions, I'm disconnected from my emotions. If I don't really feel my emotions and I'm not really aware of them, they're still gonna be there. They're still gonna influence me, but I don't have a relationship to them.
Interesting. I've never heard it expressed that way. It's yeah, because I guess like oftentimes, at least when I speak for myself, I had this idea I want to be the best version of myself, and sometimes now a lot less than in the past, but used to have that feeling of like, okay, I want to do more, in the sense of I have to be something I'm not. And here what you're
Mm.
kind of saying is it's like the reverse. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
stop trying to be something you're not. Just
Mm-hmm.
take away all the stuff you're not, and then who you are
Mm.
will come out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much. It's like it's much more about learning to uncover what I am rather than trying to be who I want to be. Because where's the want to be coming from? It's like I want to be something so I can finally accept myself and love myself and be, have the life I want. But where is all that coming from? It's like it's coming from this idea that I can be anything that I'm not. And for me, it's impossible. I can't be anything that I'm not. And the more I try to be anything that I'm not, the more unhappy I'm going to be. So, on some level, I don't have a choice. It's like either I'm going to be who I truly am, and that's going to come out of me and allow myself to feel and act from that place, then I'm going to be fulfilled and I'm going to be happy. If I don't, I'm going to be sad and um, and I'm gonna feel like how can you say that, like resentment on some level, because I'm trying to be someone that I'm not. I'm trying to do something that I think maybe on some level I want, but on a deeper layer I don't want that. So I'm like doing something I don't want, so I can't be happy. But I try to, make myself believe that I want it, because that's the best way I learn to deal with the world. But it's not because I truly want it, because I think it's the best strategy to be happy, but it isn't, because I'm not really seeing the whole picture. I'm not really seeing all of who I am, so I can't really. It's almost like I'm acting on limited information, and because of that, I'm not gonna be unhappy, because I'm not really connected to who I really am. I'm just taking one piece of who I think I am, and try to expand that into everything. Which instead of doing that, instead of like looking at the one part of who I am, trying to expand that window and just see and feel and be experienced and be more of who I am, then I'm automatically gonna be more aligned in the actions. I'm gonna automatically know more what to do, because I'm acting from me. I'm kind of like, it's almost as if you have like a kind of like this energy source and you're trying to tap into the energy source. Whenever you find something that's truly authentic to you, you're gonna tap into that authentic energy source of yourself that's gonna bring you happiness, energy, and everything. And if I tap into that, automatically it's gonna bring energy, it's gonna bring aliveness, it's gonna bring joy, it's gonna bring happiness. The more I can, like, the more parts of that power plug I can plug into, the more energy and happiness and aliveness gonna have. The more I'm trying to plug into an into a power source which isn't even, which doesn't work for me, it's not gonna it's not gonna give me any energy. I might try to trick myself to think that it is gonna give me energy, but it's not. So I'm always basing everything on that small little part that's authentic, trying to like expand it into here and get the whole energy from everything, while I'm still only getting this energy, and I'm confused about why I'm still just feeling this energy instead of the whole energy, because I'm thinking that I'm gonna try to expand, like, to extrapolate that on everything else, but it's not authentic. The rest is not authentic. Only this part is authentic. So I have to acknowledge this for what it is, and then uncover the rest and plug into all of the power sources and all of the, all of what I want to, all of who I am, and then I'm gonna really feel happy. And otherwise, I'm lacking on low energy. I'm lacking on low happiness, and then.
That's really interesting. I've been taking singing lessons for about 2 years now, and I'm very fortunate to have found a singing teacher with what I found very profound knowledge about the whole process of singing, of speaking, of breathing. And I kind of have a way to, I wouldn't say judge that, but evaluate that, because I tested out like, I think 5 teachers or 4 teachers before her, did my own research about breathing and all sorts of nuances. And before I started working with my current singing teacher, I always had this idea when I do rap, when I do music, I have to push it out. I have this message I want to share.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
I have to rap, and I want to be heard, and so I want to express that, and it was so interesting to see her help me uncover that. where she said exactly what you talked about with the power source. It's like stop stop doing everything extra, like all the extra doing stuff, stop it completely. Just and we for the first few sessions I would just hum and sing very quietly and just focus on the vibrations in my body and these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And what she helped me realize is that it's the same thing. It's like kind of allow that to come through. And since I started these lessons, my voice has changed, and I feel like my being has changed as well. And people
Mm-hmm.
give me the feedback, like when I speak in my voice, it's a lot more comforting or relaxed, and people
Mm-hmm.
enjoy listening to me a lot more than when I
Mm-hmm.
used to have this force in my voice.
Mm-hmm. And I do relate as well to this idea of like trying to like force it out or something like that, and it's just so tiring. Takes up so much energy, and it just sucks. It's like it's I have to do. It's almost the funny thing is, it's like it takes so much energy to try to do that, to press it out, to do it, and to force it. And when I let go of that and I stop forcing it, it almost feels like I'm, now suddenly it's almost like I'm trying to have this small list, this power block. I'm trying to expand it into everything, but it doesn't have enough energy because it's not connected to everything. When I come back to that and let it be what it is, then I can suddenly let everything else come out naturally. But since I first have to like bring it back to the smaller thing, to the what it actually is, then it feels like less powerful. And that's why I'm probably not doing it. But actually, if I can allow myself to go back and let it be what it is and allow it to then suddenly connect to all the other sources of my authentic, let's say my authentic voice or just my authentic self and my authentic actions, then suddenly I get a rush of like new energies and different ways of being that's coming from a relaxation because I don't have to be what I'm not. I don't have to try to expand this and be everything because then it sounds pushed. Like I'm pushing this into everything else, but it just doesn't work. It's
So,
not connecting to more energy. It's just trying to expand the energy into so many different ways, but it just doesn't work because I'm still connected to this one plug.
and yeah, and often what I find is it kind of lashes back. So
Yeah.
like you're forcing it, you try so hard, and then all of a sudden, bam, like you get sick or something else happens.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm curious about is like, how do you support people who say like, okay, I feel like I'm disconnected. I'm putting up a mask of someone I'm not being. I'm living a life that I don't want to live. Maybe I've pursued success or whatever. Maybe I've gotten it, but now I feel unfulfilled. Like, how do you help those people?
Mm. I think in the end, it all comes down to, first of all, it's kind of like I have to acknowledge that I am not really fully feeling all of who I am. Like I'm not really connected to all of who I am in a sense. It's like acknowledging that on some level I'm acting not in integrity, you know, and just seeing how that plays out, like how it feels in my body, how it shows up in my life. It's like in the small situations or the bigger situations in your life where you're like, okay, actually, if I'm fully honest, I didn't want to say that in that conversation, but I still did. If I'm fully honest, I wanted to go home 2 hours before, but I didn't. If I'm fully honest, I wanted to meet this person, but I wasn't honest about why I wanted to meet this person. Or if I'm fully honest, I'm doing this job not because I want to do it, but because of whatever other reason. And so I have to see, where am I being inauthentic and dishonest to myself? And that can have two ways. Like it can have like the way of like looking on the outside and just, scanning like what's actually happening in my life. And then the other thing is this whole, it kind of has to come hand in hand anyways. It's like you have to like start to feel this, develop this deeper inner compass of like how, like what do I actually want? Because oftentimes there might be different kind of impulses. Like one impulse is saying like I want that, the other impulse is saying I don't want that. I'm like, so like which impulse is actually true, or are both true, or what the fuck is actually happening? And so it's like this whole thing is like a process of just listening more closely, listening what is actually happening inside of myself. And I oftentimes I just uncover different parts of me, like when I'm like let's bring an example. I was talking with a friend of mine today, and it was really interesting. Like I dance a lot of salsa and bachata. Like I love couple dances. So I was out dancing last week, and I met a girl that I kind of found cute, and we were talking, we were dancing, we had some good time, and then I I was asking her. I said like maybe it's a bit out of context, but let's go for a drink some other day. Yeah, cool. And then she said, okay, that's cool, and we can also talk about some kind of business or self-employment stuff or whatever, because I'm self-employed and she's also starting her own thing. And then I said, sure, but I also find you attractive. Kind of like, because on some level, it felt right to kind of like say, yeah, that's cool, but we're not gonna talk business. Maybe we're gonna talk business, but I'm also interested in you sexually, or just like
Mm.
generally to explore that. And so then I was talking with a friend today, and I was like, so why was I saying that? So where is that coming from? You know? And then there could be one layer that could be, I want to be clear about my intentions. There's a impulse in me. It's like I want to be in integrity with how I want to be with this girl. But then there might be also another part that's like, I'm afraid that if I don't say that, maybe the vibe isn't what I would hope it to be. But then there's a deeper inquiry. So is it me acting from fear? Is it me acting from fear of, if I didn't say that, then I wouldn't be able to have the conversation or the interaction go the way I want it to go? Is that like because of fear, or is that because it's an authentic expression of my truth and the time well spent, where I'm like clear about my intentions? And so it's this whole thing is, I mean, process of like, where are the impulses for my actions coming from? And for example, in that example, I'm not sure. I'm not sure why I said it. I'm not sure where it came from. Like I have to inquire into myself, feel, and maybe in a future situation also feel like, what's happening? Like, am I actually afraid of like what would happen if I didn't say that? Maybe then I'm gonna be, taken advantage of. Then she just wants to meet me and talk some business and get some value out of me, and I'm not interested in that part. Like I'm obviously willing to share, because if I want to share, but if it's like an exchange that feels like weird, then I don't want to be in that exchange. But at the same time, maybe am I afraid of setting the boundary when it happens, when I feel the energy or the exchange starts to get weird, and I have to cut it off too early just because I'm afraid I'm gonna get there, but not because it's the authentic thing to do. And it might sound like a super analyzation, a super overanalyzation now, and of a small situation. But the thing is, the more I can feel into the delicacies of my own inner space and the roots of why I'm doing something in a small situation, the better I can be at it in my whole life. Because how the fuck am I supposed to know what I want to work, what I want to live, what I want to do with my time, with my life, if I want to have a family or not, if I can't feel the differences between what is coming from and where it's coming from? What is coming up inside of me and where it is coming from, you know? And so it's really like what I help people in terms of that, what I help people to do is to start to feel these different sources inside of themselves coming up, and talking with each other. There's a part of me is like, I should say that. There's a part of me is like, I shouldn't say that. Or there's an impulse coming up, and then is the impulse because that's my authentic deepest truth coming out, or is that impulse a fear showing itself as this impulse? And so how does that feel in my body? How does that feel in my system? How can I feel that difference? Because sometimes I say the same thing, but it's coming from the truth, from what I really want to authentically express. And sometimes I say the same thing, but it's coming from fear, you know? And I have to be able to distinguish that, because if I'm able to distinguish that, then I will have clearer information of what is actually what I truly want on a deeper level. And that's what's gonna bring the energy. Like if I said this statement that I said out of the full truth of my being and my full authenticity, it's gonna give me energy. It's gonna make me feel more alive. It's gonna make me feel more joyful. It's gonna make me feel more present, because I'm fucking there with my truth. I'm expressing myself from that authentic core. But if I'm saying the same thing and it's coming from fear, I'm gonna feel on some level gonna feel like a contraction. I'm gonna feel actually that wasn't authentic. So it's gonna take away energy in some level, on some level. And if it's authentic, if it's my truth speaking, it's gonna give me energy, you know. And I have to be aware of this process. And that's mostly what I help people to do is to be aware of that process and to start to be able to distinguish these different sources. And then the next step would be to like, okay, now that I can start to distinguish, how can I actually, do it in the moment? And there might be some embodiment tools, some grounding, some ways to, learn to, for example, hold space for the fear in the moment as I'm realizing actually it's fear that wants to do this action. Can I cater for the fear and be present with the fear rather than doing the action that's motivated by fear? Or if it's my authentic expression and I'm afraid to say it, not that it's not authentic, but maybe there's fear holding me back from actually expressing it, then how can I deal with that fear, for example? Or are there whatever other emotions or whatever other thing is there that's preventing me from acting in integrity with that deeper truth?
As you spoke about that, I just it became so obvious to me just how much courage this whole process requires. Especially the deeper you go, because at least from my understanding and my perspective, often they're linked to certain, as you said, fears basically. And it's always a pleasant thing to cover fear. Not everyone wants to do that.
And also not everyone has to do it. Like, honestly, like on some level, I think I make my life very difficult by doing all of that. Because and sometimes I'm also questioning why it's even necessary. Because on some level, if I was just like, there's a certain, like, there's definitely a big part of me that's inquiring into all that because I like it and I think it's like a more beautiful world if everyone was able to be authentic. But I have to be honest, there's also a part of me that's like almost obsessive about it, And I think almost any genius on some level that has had some kind of insight had some kind of obsession as well. And I think it's also partly true with me. I'm not saying I'm a genius, but I think there's certain things that I started to see, but there's also some kind of compulsion about having to be authentic. That's also making it sometimes harder for me to be, because I'm like, I'm polarized into one side of the spectrum. So like if I'm not sure, I'd rather go for the authentic, potentially, I'm rather go for the authentic thing than a not authentic thing, which means that the authentic thing is done more often than the inauthentic, but the inauthentic is part of the same polarity. So I need to explore both in order to find the middle ground, And sometimes I might just fuck things up because I'm too much trying to be authentic and say everything that's alive, because I'm like, maybe that just wasn't necessary, I was also talking with this friend today, and sometimes he was like, especially when interacting with with women, it's like sometimes there's certain things that are just said in the energy, that they're just said in the in the vibe, and I don't necessarily have to point it out and make it very obvious and clear and like bring it to the front, and maybe there's a motivation inside of me that wants to bring everything to the front, because then we can be, I can be more authentic. But what if the authentic thing would be to be flowing in the energy without having to name things, But I think as a first step, being able to name things, name my authentic truth, can be good, because oftentimes we don't do it and we're really afraid to do it. So naming what I think about the situation or the person or what I want to do in the moment or I don't want to do, naming that can help to connect more to that authentic truth. But at some point, I might have to let go of the words again and just be authentic in the energy without needing even the words, because the words can also be crooks, can also be like an aid, but more sometimes a band-aid for being able to be authentic and in alignment without having to say it, without having to use words, Sometimes the action is more powerful than the words, and sometimes not even an action, like sometimes even just, being clear in my intention, in the energy that I'm with someone, the way that I look at the person, the way that I'm interacting with them, the way that I talk and everything can be enough to be authentic about something. I don't have to name it, but sometimes naming it can be, can really be helpful as a first step, and sometimes it's also helpful as the full truth of how to deal with deal with a situation. But yeah, it's like there's also, let's say, there's also downsides to that, in a sense.
As you were speaking, I was thinking of kids, because I work with kids. I do like team trainings, help them build a better group atmosphere, and between they're between 8 and 12 years old. So I work a lot with kids, and what's interesting about kids is they're real, and they mirror you when you're not real. They show it to you instantly. They don't care about like throwing some nasty statement at you. They'll just do it. They'll do it, and in a way, they don't do that process. To them, being authentic, it's just what's happening. They don't think about it. But then again, what I also realized, I guess, what a massive strength of yours is that because you're doing this process within yourself and you're so dedicated to it, you now have the ability to guide other people through that process as well. A way that a child might be able to be authentic, but he might not be able to help another person find their authentic self.
And also, in a way, it's like there's a difference between being authentic and being honest. And I think this is one of the biggest things that are, confusing people, because I can be authentic. Like, let's say, I can be authentic with what is right for me, without, for example, let's say, what it would be a good example. Let's say I feel like I want to be with a girl and I find her attractive and I would love to be intimate with her, and I also know I don't want to be in a relationship with her. That's just a feeling. That's what I want. Then, honest thing would be to say, I'm really attracted to you. I would love to have sex with you, and I don't want to be in a relationship with you. That would be honest. But would it be authentic? Would it be the most beautiful expression of my truth and of my authentic self? Maybe not. Maybe I'm killing certain kind of energy or vibe or potential experience between us because I'm naming things that don't have to be named. I don't have to be honest about it. I can be clear about it in my energy. I can be authentic about it, but I don't necessarily have to say it. And there's some other moments where I do have to say it because I start to feel that maybe there's some expectations on the other side. And if I don't name it, it's going to be going somewhere where it's not authentic anymore because the other person has some assumptions, some expectations. Maybe she wants to get in the relationship. I don't, stuff like that. But what if we both have the same intention, but I don't name it? We can have a beautiful, magical experience where that doesn't even have to be named. And it's more beautiful than if it ever was named. Because you're naming certain things, you're making them, putting them into a certain box. If I don't name it, it could be anything. And it doesn't have to be, I'm kind of like condensing the reality into what I name it to be, And even though it might be honest, first of all, there might be things that could be happening that aren't even, like, I could have such a beautiful experience with this girl that is so mind-blowing and so deep and so deeply touching, and it's changing everything in my life, and yet I don't want to be in a relationship with her, and I just wanted to be intimate, and we had like an amazing moment. But by naming that, how I wanted to name it how I said to name it in the first place, like, I really find you attractive, I would love to have sex with you, and I don't want to be in a relationship, it could kill some of the magic in a sense, And so that's the difference between being authentic and being honest. Being honest isn't always a good thing. Like, for example, being honest, like if there's, let's say, there's a person and let's say there's a woman and she has a dress and she looks really fat in that dress. The honest thing would be to say, you look really fat in that dress. But is it the authentic thing? Is it the best thing to say in the moment that really that I feel most in integrity with? And it might not be. It might be that I'm like, she might ask me how do I look in the dress? And then I might say something which is authentic, which is not saying like, I really love that dress, I think you look amazing in it. But it would also not be, you look fat in the dress. Because that honesty could be very hurtful. It could be like, it's okay, but I don't really like it too much. You know? I'm still like, maybe it is okay, or maybe I'm saying like, I don't like it too much. Whatever the expression, whatever the authentic expression would be. But it wouldn't necessarily be the blunt, open, honest statement about the actual factual reality, because it wouldn't be authentic. It would create more of an impact than what would be authentic. Because authentic means, like, in a way, for me, authenticity is almost like a relational experience, and honesty is a factual. It's like a factual statement, you know. Like, is it honest or is it not? Is it true or is it false? You know, and authenticity is more of like a me in relationship to this other person. It could be also a good friend or whatever. Like, if I see a very good friend being super excited about something and telling me how excited he is about this project, and I don't like the project or the idea, but I like the energy of it, and I appreciate and I honor his passion about it, then my authentic expression might be something like, on some level, acknowledging the joy of that without killing it by saying an honest statement about this idea is bullshit, it's not going to fly. Because it might be honest, but it might kill the vibe, and it might not be authentic for me to do it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Just letting it land, because I felt like it was quite impactful what you said.
And I think it's actually, the important part is really to make that distinction, because I think a lot of people confuse authenticity for honesty. And I know people that use honesty in a very mean way. So honesty isn't by itself something good or, like, let's say, constructive. Honesty is just a fact. Sure, it's false, but it's not, it doesn't have the relational aspect. And for me, authenticity, in the way that I look at it, is like a relational experience with the world. Like, I'm relating with the world in an authentic way. It's a different thing than I'm being honest with the world. Because if I relate authentically with the world, then I'm gonna be in a play, in a dance. I'm gonna be like in interaction with the world. It's like, what is, like, I'm doing a move, the world's gonna do a move back, and I'm gonna do another move. And how can I walk that game, that interaction, that moving back and forth? How can I move through that in an authentic way, where I'm staying aligned with my values, but because values can also be something more mental, but like with my true, deeper sense of what feels authentic, what feels true to me, what feels like the right thing to do on the deepest level. And that's like almost like a relational journey with the world. It's not so much like, you know, it's not so much like I can say that's the authentic thing to do, because I will always have to take into account the relationship with whatever I'm dealing with, and explore myself and what's coming up in me, because it's always like a dance. Everything that I do then creates another reaction inside of me. Then I have to reevaluate. I might be thinking, doing this kind of action, or maybe let's say I think about starting a new project, and starting that project might take a lot of time, but I feel like it's really what I want to do. Maybe it might inspire a lot of people, whatever. Maybe it's like an event series I want to do once a month or something. And then I start doing it, and I start to get feedback from the world, and I start to see, actually, that's not the authentic thing I want to do. Maybe I want to change it, or maybe I'm doing it another way, or I want to abandon it. But it was still the authentic thing to start it. So it's like it's always in relation to the world. Like everything can change at any moment, you know. And I think this is especially true in dating because a lot of people they're not. I don't think they're aware of this. And for me personally, what I really find fascinating is that let's say when I go home, let's say when I go home with a girl to my place, I'm on a date. Most men would probably think like I want to have sex with her, and I'm sure about it. And no matter what happens, they if it was possible, they would want to do it. Say, but for me, I don't know anything. Any moment, I don't know anything because I will always have to listen to what feels true. It could feel in one moment I'm
Absolutely.
really attracted to her. I would love to be intimate with her, love to have something with her. The next moment, something happens. We're talking about something, and the energy changes, and it wouldn't be authentic anymore to do that. And then the next moment, it could be authentic again, you know? But if I'm following that truth, what I found, especially in my relating with other people, that could be in friendships or especially in dating, is the more I am able to listen to that truth of the moment, the deeper I can go with that person. Because then the subtlest change of, the subtlest change of how I feel about myself and about the situation is going to be acknowledged. So everything that I am in every moment, with all the details and all the small little changes, everything has a place, and everything is okay. Everything is good. But if I have some preconceived notion of what needs to happen in the next moment, and but then I feel a little bit unsafe about opening up because I'm not 100% sure the next moment I still want. But if I can be 100% open about what I want in every moment and it cannot change in every moment, then everything can be and nothing has to be. And suddenly you're going so many layers deeper in terms of how deep you can relate with each other and how much of like a connection you can actually have. Since suddenly you can really be who you are. You can suddenly like fully open yourself up to everything that you are because you don't have to hold back. You don't have to hold that small little piece that says like, oh, actually I said this moment, but now it changed a little bit. And usually I would overplay that. I would like, okay, forget about that. But that little part of you that's coming in also has a place, and suddenly everything changes. Everything is on such a more subtle and deeper layer because there's no pretending anymore. There's no like I need to be this or that for this other person or whatever. Like, no, I don't need to be anything or anyone for this other person. I can literally be who I am, rather than it's the same principle as in the beginning. Like that's what I'm portraying to be. Now that I portrayed this, I have to be it. Whenever another part of the whole spectrum of me is coming up and wants to show itself, since it's not in here, I don't allow it to show up because I have to be this now, because I portrayed this. But if I know that at the moment I'm portraying this, but there's all these other parts that I don't know, but all these other parts have a place, then they can come up even if they, counteract this part. Because like now suddenly there's another part of you that I got to know. Suddenly I know more of you. So suddenly you can be more of who you are, rather than now you're a different person. No, you've always been that person. It's just a different part of you coming up, and I honor that part.
I grew up with this notion that there's things which are good and things that are bad. And I feel like a lot of people have this idea. This is what's good, it's bad. I still feel it running in myself, a lot less than it used to be, but it's still there. And what I hear you saying is when you're kind of allowing and being in acceptance of whatever is coming up, then it's kind of like that goes away and it creates such a feeling of maybe freedom or space, kind of like a relief, like an okay, no more masks. I could just let that go. Yeah.
And it literally feels like that. It's like a relaxation in the system. It's like suddenly I don't have to be what I'm not. I can actually let come out who I am. Because we are usually, that's the same picture again, we are usually used to like being a part of who we actually are. Like that's all of who we are. That's what we're used to portray, That's what we maybe even used to connect to ourselves, And if suddenly something comes out that is us, that we're not aware of, first of all, we might be like, oh fuck this part, like no, and now suddenly like I'm confused because like what the fuck, this is me coming up, what the fuck. And then even worse, the other person is gonna see that other part that I'm not even safe about, that I'm not even sure about, that I don't even know what the fuck to do with this, you know. And so I'm in a bad situation two times, because I'm in a bad situation for myself, because like I didn't even fucking know this part about myself. I didn't even see this coming. What should I think about it? And then I'm like also thinking like, what should the other person think about it? But actually, if you're looking at it as like it's always been there, it's just another part that I suddenly learned to connect to. It's suddenly learned to come up and like, oh, I can allow myself now suddenly to see more of who I am. And since if you have this like base foundation of how, if you allow that to be the paradigm in which you're relating with someone else, then anything that comes up that's authentically coming up, and also like that's the challenge there too as well, to like be able to really feel that. Well, what is it like, where is it coming from? Is that like an authentic part of me coming up, or is it whatever, my fear or some other thing coming up? And then, that's also not to make it bad, but that's also just like to be able to see where these things are coming from. And even if I'm in the interaction with the other person, if I'm able to say like, actually, I just said this and I realized it was coming up from the fear, then I can also get to know myself more. The other person can get to know me more, and we can connect on a deeper level, even on the parts where I'm like, now I was doing something that wasn't coming from that truth, but because I realized it wasn't coming from my truth, I learned more about myself. I am more authentic, and the other person can see me more for who I am. And so by entering this paradigm of everything that is can be, and if something comes up that I didn't expect, then I learn more and I can connect more, because it's always been there. And if I neglect it, then I'm disconnecting from who you truly are, and vice versa.
You mentioned the thing about honesty. I told you like a while back in this conversation about like you made that differentiation between like honesty and authenticity. And when I told you like, okay, it takes tremendous courage, it's because I realized like, sure, the focus is expressing your authentic self, but to do that, you need to be honest with yourself. You might not have to. For example, when you see that woman with that dress, you think, well, maybe she looks fat in that dress. You need to be honest about that to yourself. Is that may be the thought that comes up, and then be like, okay, what would be the most authentic expression now? Maybe it'd be like, I don't know, whatever. But yeah.
I think the honesty that you talk about here is like it's more of an acknowledgement, in a sense. Like, I acknowledge what I see in myself. I see what I see. It's like there's something coming up and I honor it. I acknowledge it, I see it. Whereas the honesty that I was talking about is, it's more of like, is the statement that I make about something, or is like what I'm saying to the outside, or what I'm, is this honest on a, like, is it factual true? So it's factually true. But the honesty that you're talking about now, I think is more of like, I have to be honest about it. That moment means I have to acknowledge what is there. I have to look at it. I have to really honor it. It's like, almost, it's like the same word, but it's kind of like a different flavor to it. You know what I mean?
I think so. And the other honesty is kind of like this truth no matter what kind of thing. It was like, you see a quote unquote fat person, you say, you're fat. Well, that was true. So
Exactly.
But then that yeah.
Yeah, and with this kind of honesty that we just talked about now, you're fat, and it's true. It's like, it's one of the worst and most mean ways to hide mean behavior. Like, there's people that use this consciously to be mean to people by hiding behind the fact that what they're saying is true, is like it's honest, you know. They can
It's
be the
funny
most mean person by being honest.
Right. It's funny because, like, in a way, quote unquote, they're being honest, but in another part, they're just absolutely not being honest or acknowledging of themselves.
Yeah, they're like dishonest in their intention or in the motives why they're saying something, but they're honest in the statements that they make about the observations, you know. So that's where the difference comes in. Is like, one is the relational thing and the other one is the factual thing. And if you're just looking at the factual, you know, evaluation of the words that are being said, if you say whatever is being said is true, but the way you're saying it or the motivation it comes from and why you're saying it, that is the relational aspect. What is your relationship to authenticity, or why is this topic interesting to you? Or embodied authenticity?
Yeah, well, the specific reason I reached out to you for this conversation today was one video where you just talked about your life story, and that was, you know, some of the struggles you had when you were a teenager, like social groups. You're like, who am I? What are these groups? Like, how do I fit into all of these? It's called confusion. At least that's how I perceived it. And I went through the same thing. How do I know it's the same thing? I don't know, but at least I perceive it to be similar. Yeah, and I spent a lot of my life not being me and kind of excusing different tools for escape, be that video games, watching Netflix, and these kind of things. And it made me miserable. It really did make me miserable. And I was fortunate enough to have the foresight to see that some of these other avoidance strategies that a lot of society tells you is what you need to be happy, be that success, I kind of could, through reading the right books and having, I don't know, some spontaneous insights, see through that and realize that what so many people think will bring happiness will not bring happiness, even though I didn't have to experience that. For example, let's say be a celebrity and have people like you and these kind of things. And to me, it's like it's just a quest of like, what does it take to actualize my potential, live a happy life? That's kind of what I'm curious about. And yeah, that's it.
Is there any specific area of your life where that potentially feel like it's hardest to be authentic for you?
Great question. Areas of my life where it feels the hardest to be authentic.
Where it is hardest or most meaningful for you to be authentic? Maybe, let's say, for some people, being authentic in work isn't that important as in relationships. Where some other people are like, I can't do work that I don't stand behind the values of the company or something, you know, for example. You know, there's certain...
Well, yeah, that's, I guess that's part of my drive in life. It's like, part of me is so dedicated to becoming good at, or rather, like, how do I say this? Like, using my time. Like, no, I want to say this differently. Because I knew like what it felt to go to school for all these years and really not being happy about that. The fact that I had to wake up at 7 every day, stay until 5, like feel like it was completely out of control, in a sense, like I had no control over that. And I couldn't tell my parents, like, I don't want to go to school. They would like, put their conditioning on me and tell me, like, you have to go to school. There's no other option, blah, 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 blah. Because I experienced that, to me, what's the most meaningful is like being just conscious to create my life in a way that I have the freedom to do the things that are meaningful to me. And I realized that it's absolutely possible, but it requires a clear dedication, because if I want to make a living doing things I really love, I need to be good at that. Not even good, but great at that, to live the way that I want to do. And so to me, I wake up and I'm like, if I waste my time the way that I did with playing video games and Netflix like that, I can kind of suck myself down into a place where it would be very difficult to get out of. So that's kind of the most meaningful thing to me.
Interesting. Yeah, I totally relate to that actually. And it's funny because I just talked yesterday with a coaching friend, and he said, like, it seems like freedom is a big value for you. And it's also a big value for me, and it's also a big value for him. And we start to see, like, I think we connect with people that have similar values. We do connect with them a lot, and since, it's just interesting to see, certain people, they're not interested about authenticity, about embodied authenticity. They don't care, they don't give a shit, and other people are, and so it's just interesting to see, like, there's just people are wired differently, and I think for me it's always been important, and also in a sense it's also something about freedom that is really important to me, and it's just interesting to see how we are going to walk around life, connecting with the people that we resonate with, and also in a sense, like, not everyone is going to give a shit about what we give a shit about. That's why we don't connect with like, if you're truly authentic, we don't connect with everyone. That's like the deep insight in the end. Like, being authentic, being, like, let's say, embodied authenticity isn't about being friends with everyone and having all the connections with all kinds of people and all that, but it's about having the most meaningful, deep, and powerful connections with the people that are authentically a real match to you on whatever level. And I think this is what has all made it worth it for me to see that I'm not gonna be friends with everyone if I really go down that path, and you have to be able to see that and also be willing to go there, in a sense, because there's gonna be some people that are just that you're not gonna connect with anymore. I know some friends from childhood that I hung out with them sometimes, and I just realized they're completely interested in different things. They don't give a shit about authenticity. Like, it's just not a topic they're interested in at all. But on the other hand, I had such beautiful, amazingly profound conversations and connections with people because of what I did. That makes it worth it. And yeah, maybe, I don't know, it just came up to say, I think it's like, we are not necessarily trying to, when I say try, that's my way of, like, being the most fulfilled, the most happy, and it might not be everyone's way. It's not like an absolute good thing. It's like, do you resonate with it or not? I think, which is important. Like, do you find the way you want to be? Like, when you're talking about do you find your life that you're happy with? Do I find my life that I'm happy with, the way of living and all that? And I think in the end, for me at least, this is what I'm striving for. I'm striving for what is authentic to me. That could be something that's completely different to other people, and they might not even be interested in. But the people that are going to be really interested in,
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
It reminds me of, like, for me, part of my authenticity is making music, writing lyrics, writing songs that are just aligned with me. And the stuff I write about is just not very appealing in the mainstream. Say it like that. It's yeah. And yeah, to me, for example, my singing teacher, she worked with, like, really successful people, and became so obvious to me, when you are successful, they put in the contract who you're able to show yourself with in public. They decide which clothes you can wear, right? That's like the contract of these kind of things. They have shows that they align you to certain shows, and you have to go to these shows. And my singing teacher, she used to be a professional football player. She's 60 now, but she was in the German national team. And she witnessed things where one of the main players, I don't know if it was in her team or in another team, they had a broken shin. And because he was so important, they taped this guy's shin, put a needle in him, it was broken, and put him back on the field. And I'm so grateful for understanding this, because I feel like this is the complete opposite of authenticity. It's like the people we see in the media, the people who are successful, the people who are stars. But it's such a paradox, such a confusion, because when you really look deeper inside, these people are not necessarily happy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been such a big realization and blessing to know that before I had to experience that.
Yeah. Also, I think it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be successful if you're not authentic, but because if you're being inauthentic, or that you have to be inauthentic to be successful. But I believe that it has been a strategy that has been working quite a lot in general in our world. It doesn't mean that's the only paradigm that works, and I think I want to, at least for myself, also because I want to believe it. But I do believe that actually is, like, there's more energy that's being unlocked when you're actually authentic, but it's gonna create a shift in paradigm, and it's gonna create a shift in the energy. So it's gonna show in a different way. Like, success is gonna show in a different way. But even, let's say, worldly success and making a lot of money and all these things, I think, are possible by being authentic. But you're just being challenged way more than if you're being inauthentic, because you're not just trying to play the game the best the game can be played, but you're trying to, be authentic and relate with the game in a way that's authentic and find your way in that world. So you have more things to consider, but also in the end, what's going to come out of it is more deeply rooted, in a sense. No one can come to you and say, like, actually, I know you're full of shit, because you're not full of shit. But if you talk to someone that's being inauthentic and bases everything on that, at some point you're just susceptible to because you're not really rooted in something deeper. So on some level, potentially can crash down because you're being inauthentic, and there's valid concerns that people can make about you because you're portraying to be one person, but you're someone else in that context, someone else in that context, and you're not really, like, there's not, there's just something missing in a way. So, but yeah, it's a very different, interesting topic there.
Yeah, as you said, like, I feel like it's so much more sustainable the way that you approach it, and the book Power versus Force explains it so beautifully, because you're acting like you're tapping into true power, and anything else, like, yeah, you may be successful, but for example, when you use your voice with force, I learned from my singing teacher, it damages your voice permanently. And some of these superstars who don't know about, like, using your natural voice, they have damaged voices for the rest of their lives.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Whenever it gets vulnerable about yourself and you start to, like, connect to things, especially when it's like on a podcast like this where people can watch it, it's tough, man. Like, it's tough. Like, I haven't created a My Story video for 4 years, that I have my YouTube channel. Never did it because it's hard, man. Hard to show yourself vulnerably with what with what's really going on, with the things that might be, that with the things that I am challenged by, or that I was challenged by. And it's tough. It's definitely tough. I think the toughest one is to be actually really truthful and authentic about something that I'm challenged by now. That's always the most difficult, because obviously, like, if I can talk about something that's been difficult in the past, but I overcame it, then I'm like, well, I don't care about it anymore. But if I'm talking about what's really actual with me right now, then it's usually more difficult.
All right, Jonas, thank you so much for taking the time. If there's somebody who's watching this, right, and he connects to what you talked about, this idea of being authentic, connecting more to, like, the real part of you, the authentic part of you, where can people find you? if let's say they need like some guidance, they want some guidance and some support from you?
I mean, obviously, I do have a YouTube channel that's called Embodied Authenticity. So on a lot of topics, there's definitely some videos to watch to practice yourself, and to learn to just to explore yourself more in relation to the world, let's say. And there's also my website. It's called embodied-authenticity.com. And there you will find my coaching. You will see a little more detailed description of how I coach people. And there's also a link there for like a 15 minutes call where we can just chat, and I can, we can talk about how I can support you on the path, and if I'm the right person for, to support you. And I do offer one-on-one coachings there. So people can definitely get in contact there too, if they feel like they want to have more personal support.
Awesome, thank you. I'll leave the links in the description, and if anyone's
Awesome.
interested, I can check it out.
Cool.